Hello and welcome to Geography Rocks. Today we're going to be looking at resource management, and our focus in this revision lesson is to look at the global distribution of resources. Take a moment to think about what a resource is. A resource is a stock or supply of something that has value or purpose. There are lots of different types of resources, but possibly the most important ones for us are the following: food, water and energy. Up on the top right we've got some keywords that might come up during this revision session. The first one is resource, undernutrition, inequalities, irrigation, consumption, HICs and NEEs. So we've already looked at the fact that a resource is a stock or supply of something that has a value or a purpose, such as food, water or energy. Undernutrition means that you're not getting the calorie intake that you need for your body to thrive. Inequalities are differences between richer and poorer countries, or between different areas in a country or different people. Irrigation is about watering crops. Consumption comes from the word to consume, so how much of something somebody has. HIC is a high income country, and an NEE is a newly emerging economy. If you're unsure of any of those words, jot them down and then look at them again later. Let's move on. Let's take a look at food first of all. So this map shows the share of people who are undernourished in 2017. There's a little memo there to make sure that we read all of the information about the graph, because you can get some tips and clues in an exam if you take on board all the information you've been given. So it says undernourishment measures the share of the population that has a calorie intake which is insufficient to meet the minimum energy requirements necessary for a given individual. Countries with undernourishment rates below 2.5% are not shown. So if you look at the United Kingdom, for example, you'll see that it's grey, and that's because we have no significant problem with undernourishment. They're lower than 2.5%. There are a couple of countries there that haven't been shaded in central parts of the African continent, and I think it's more a case of the fact that data wasn't available as opposed to the fact that there isn't a calorie intake issue. Okay, so let's look at the graph carefully, and we can see that there are different areas shaded different colours. So if it's a light cream colour, it means 0 to 5%. So countries such as Chile and Argentina are showing low levels of people being undernourished. If you look at parts of Africa, however, you'll see some areas which are very dark, sort of dark red colour, which shows between 50 and 60% of people are undernourished. Okay, so I've pointed to the final little country there, is Zimbabwe, down in southern Africa, where 51% of people are considered to be undernourished. Okay, so looking at food, why is this resource significant? Well, we know, don't we, that a poorly balanced diet can cause illness and disease. People need to be well fed in order to be productive. And then on the flip side of it, we know that obesity is an increasing problem, particularly in the developed world. So what are the global inequalities? Over 1 billion people worldwide do not get enough calories. Undernutrition affects a further 2 billion people. Countries in sub-Saharan Africa suffer the most from undernutrition. So there's inequalities between countries as to who has more food and who has less. Let's move on now and take a look at water. So this map is about a projection, what we think it will be like in 2025. So the title is Projected Water Scarcity in 2025. If something is scarce, it means that there's little of it, it's hard to find. So taking a look at this map, we can see that the blue areas show that there's little or no water scarcity anticipated in 2025. However, those areas shaded partially or completely in red are those areas which have physical water scarcity. So there could be areas of desert, etc. And the areas in orange are economic water scarcity, countries who cannot afford to exploit their supplies. So again, if you take a little look at it, we can start to think about what this map tells us. we can start to look to see if there's a pattern. I would be looking here at continents if I was looking for a pattern. So if I take a look at North America and Europe, there's little or no water scarcity projected for 2025. However, if I take a look at South America, then I could say that in 2025 the majority of South America is going to have economic water scarcity, where they can't afford to exploit the supplies they have. And then if I look at the Middle East and Northern Africa, large parts of India, then I can say that those areas by 2025 will suffer with physical water scarcity, so a lack of water and deserts in those regions. So why is water a resource significant? Well, we know, don't we, that water is essential for life. It's essential for drinking and for cooking. It is vital for crops, to grow crops, and I'm using that word irrigation, which means to water. And it's also important as it is used to produce energy. Okay, so the global inequalities. There are global inequalities because of climate and rainfall supply. Water scarcity can happen even within a country. So some regions might be nearer to a river or a water source, whereas other areas might be in a drier part of that country with a different type of climate. Capturing, storage and extraction of water is expensive. Many poor countries do have water shortages. LICs, low-income countries and newly emerging economies use most of the water for irrigation. HICs tend to use their water in industry. Moving on now to look at energy. So if we take a look at this bar graph, we can look at primary energy consumption by the world region in 2018. It says underneath, primary energy consumption is measured in terawatt hours. Note that this data includes only commercially traded fuels such as coal, oil and gas, nuclear and modern renewables used in electricity production. As such, it doesn't include traditional biomass resources. But just looking at the graph and looking for trends, you can see down the bottom there, Africa, South and Central America are using a lot less energy. Surprisingly, Europe isn't at the very top. We've got North America and Asia Pacific above us. Europe are changing their energy supplies, they're using a lot more renewable, and equally a lot of their heavy industry has now declined, and so therefore overall in the UK energy consumption has gone down, as it has in many other European countries. Asia Pacific, developing and producing a lot of goods, you can see there that their energy consumption has significantly beaten the other areas, but has also increased actually over the years as well. Okay, so why is this resource significant? Well, it's needed for light, heat, power, and those things are important in development. Having light, heat and power and energy means that a country can develop and make more money. It's used to power factories and it's used to provide fuel for transport. And again, all those things create jobs, employment and therefore money for that country. The global inequalities are these. Rich countries consume more energy than the poorer countries. The Middle East is a major oil supplier, however its own oil consumption and consumption of energy is quite low. As newly emerging economies become industrialised, the demand for energy will increase further. So that's our quick recap. Richer countries use more energy than poor countries. Many people in sub-Saharan Africa are undernourished and suffer more from water scarcity. The final task for today involves looking at a blank map of the world. So take a moment to look at this blank map of the world and then using what we've covered so far and maybe using a revision guide or notes that you've taken, you'll need to annotate the map of the world to show the global inequalities in resource supply and consumption. Pause the video here whilst you add some notes to your blank map, and then as you move on you will see another slide with some of the answers that you might wish to include on your map as well. So pause now. Okay, so this is a map which I annotated for this video. I haven't included everything on it, but I have included some stuff. You'll notice the first thing that I drew on was the red line there, it marks on the equator, and you can see that the equator runs straight through Kenya. If you look at Africa, you can see that Kenya always reminds me of like a 50p shape because it's like a bit like a pentagon. And it runs straight through the middle of Kenya. And then you can double check that you're in the right place, because we also know, don't we, that the equator runs through northern parts of Brazil. So the equator is drawn on there, and then I've added some information. So from the top it says Europe is well nourished with no signs of future water scarcity. Northern Africa, Egypt will suffer from physical water scarcity by 2025. The majority of South America will suffer from economic water scarcity by 2025. India has one of the world's highest energy consumption levels, and much of Africa experiences both undernourishment and economic water scarcity. There's much more information I could have included on this map, and hopefully you've done so using your notes and the revision guides that are available. My name's Mrs. Wingham, and you've been listening to Geography Rocks.